Okay, so the game everyone's been waiting for in the group stages, France versus England. It's finished 2-1 to France. There was a bit of controversy in this game. England were second best, make that clear. France did deserve to win, although it was a nervy last few minutes for the French as England threw the kitchen sink at the game and finally started attacking properly and creating chances. But early on, it was a very even game. In the first half, Rousseau had a goal disallowed on 16 minutes for offside. Now, I've said this before when it comes to football, and with the introduction of VAR and the semi-automated offsides, I do think the offside rule needs looking at. That law in the game, it needs looking at, because that is not a real clear advantage to the attacking team. Because if you look at where Bethany gets the ball, she's basically in line. We're talking part of her boot, the outside of her boot is offside. So I've mentioned this before. I do have a book from 1992, the last season of the back pass rule, where the keeper could pick the ball up with their hands when it was a back pass, and that was a major rule change in the early 90s. Was the back pass was changed where the goalkeeper couldn't pick up the ball. So this was the rules at the time, and offside then, over 30 years ago, 33 years ago, you had to have a clear gap between the attacker and the defender. And back in the day before VAR, the benefit of the doubt was given to the attacking team. Um, when we're giving offsides for millimetres, I think this is getting a bit ridiculous. But under the current interpretation, it is offside. And that was the momentum swing, because at that point England was slightly on top, slightly. And they were attacking with energy and creating chances in the wide areas, and then they stopped playing. Defensively in that first half, England were all over the place after the goal is disallowed. You just look at the wide areas where the French had a lot of joy, and the centre backs were too far apart, and they're not picking up runners. They completely had a meltdown in the first half. They did. The goal's disallowed. They have a meltdown. They lose their focus, and the French just were ripping them to shreds. Quite honestly, this could have been 4 or 5 before half time, for being honest. Katoto scores the first goal in 36 minutes, and Baltimore scores the second goal in 39 minutes. And I don't know what Lucy Bronze is doing defensively when she gets the ball, she's on the floor, kick it out for a corner. Don't kick it back into play on the ground. That was a really silly bit of play there, desperation play there, poor decision making. But there was a VAR check for a potential foul in the build-up. It's right in front of the referee. Referee waves play on. And defensively, England were just all over the place. And it took until 86 minutes for England to finally do something in attack. They started to throw the kitchen sink in it. They got a bit desperate. They get the goal from Walsh. They keep trying. They have multiple opportunities where they literally throw the kitchen sink at it. But the French just look better. Better energy, better in the 50-50s. They look fitter. Not going to lie there, they looked a bit more switched on. They had a higher tempo, higher energy, and were better organised. And when they were on the back foot facing the kitchen sink being thrown at them, and everything else in the kitchen, I think, being thrown at them, and potentially the bedroom and the living room, because I think England threw a whole house at it, best way to describe it, they looked less, they looked like they could deal with the onslaught. Yeah, they conceded one goal, but they didn't concede a second. And it was desperation time. But this puts England on the back foot, because the Netherlands beat Wales comfortably, if not convincingly, after their first half performance. And this is the group of death. The big nations going home. Now England are the holders. Now this puts added pressure on England to get results against Wales and the Netherlands. France and the Netherlands, whoever wins that game, if that game does end up being a win, could determine who finishes top, who finishes second, and who finishes third. If that's a draw, that really mixes up everything and gives all 4 nations the chance to get out of the group. So it's a very interesting one how Group D is going to play out now. But because England were quite honestly not good enough for 85 minutes, I would expect changes to occur for the next game. The French, look, there's been a lot of discussion about the squad selection for the French, like Renard, for example, and the Sommer not being in the squad, and that those were big omissions. And there's been a lot of discussion in the French media about those omissions from their squad. That's some experience, but the younger players stepped up, and they looked very, very comfortable without those two leadership figures in the team who've been integral parts of the French setup for so long. I think Serena Wiegmann is I can there's going to be changes to the starting lineup for the second game. It is a squad game after all, but I can see changes being made. Defensively, there were some issues there, some big issues there. The first goal, the centre backs are too far apart, and where the French support runners are coming in, they've overwhelmed the midfield. So I could see a tactical change, maybe personnel change. But I will say this about the group stages. I sort of fell asleep through Germany-Poland. I watched the first 20 minutes and fell asleep. But from what I've seen, the heat's having an impact on the games. Heat and humidity. We are seeing a lot of water breaks. We're only seeing goals from open play. We've not seen a goal from a penalty or a free kick yet, which is very interesting. We've seen goals come from corners, but not penalties and free kicks. So set plays are not having the same impact on goal scoring as at previous tournaments, be it in the men's or women's games, which I find interesting. We've not had a goalless game yet. We've not had a draw yet. So these are things we can take out of the tournament. We've only seen one real blowout, and that was Spain against Portugal, where one side was clearly dominant throughout that game, and it didn't seem likely that the opposition were going to score. But we've seen a lot of teams win with clean sheets. This is not one of those games, but we're seeing games start off at a high pace and then the pace drop off. We're seeing substitutions have proven crucial as well, and how they can be used to tactically change things. We are seeing a lot of young players do really well. It's been an interesting tournament so far. I wouldn't say any of the games have truly disappointed that I've seen so far. It's going to be interesting to see if the goals per game average goes up or goes down. So I'm going to chart the goals per game average, I think. And at the end of the group stage, I'm going to look at the goals per game average and compare it to the last tournament back in 2022, looking at the goals per game average at the same stage. Because I've got a funny feeling the goals per game average is actually lower in this tournament than 3 years ago in the delayed last Euro. So that's going to be interesting to look at. But overall, I think England were poor, and France were brilliant. And it does throw up the conundrum about who actually is going to go on and win the tournament, because some fancy teams have looked laboured, like the Netherlands in the first half against Wales. Germany didn't blow Poland out the water, though they won the game. Italy misfired in their win. Spain weren't really tested by Portugal, if we can be honest, although in the second half they eased up and Portugal were more competitive. Spain really weren't tested. So it's going to be interesting how the rest of the group stage pans out, and we shall see who makes the knockout stages. But England have made it more difficult for themselves getting out of the group, and it adds extra pressure on them to get a result against the Netherlands and Wales and win well in both games, because the goal differential could also prove very crucial. But there we go. France are beating England 2-1. And that's the first batch of group games done, and we'll see what the next batch of group games throw up in the coming days. So there we go. 4 days into the tournament, and no draws yet. So there we go. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on the game in the comment section below. I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.